A bombshell report from Politico, which includes leaks from top Trump allies and officials, reveal the panic, fear, and anger that Donald Trump has regarding the ongoing Epstein scandal and his total inability to change the narrative. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we're going to take a look at this bombshell Politico article and also look at a video courtesy of CNN's data analyst Harry Enton, which provides polling data to justify why Donald Trump is so terrified at the moment. But let's take a look. POTUS is clearly furious. White House is frustrated by all-consuming Epstein coverage. Officials and allies close to the White House detail the mood inside an administration haunted by a notorious sex offender who died by suicide nearly 6 years ago. Donald Trump is angry. His team is exasperated. The Republican-controlled House is in near rebellion. I just want to focus on that for just a second, folks. Think about that preamble to this bombshell report. This is just a perilous time politically for the Trump administration, unlike anything they've ever seen. And also keep in mind that if Donald Trump has one talent, it is leading the media around by the nose, right? He is able to jump from one scandal to the next and emerge relatively unscathed. I've said it before and I'll say it again, it's incredibly frustrating and dangerous, but that Trump is able to defy political gravity, not outright, but he's able to bend it, I should say, better than any politician that we've ever seen. He just is. And this is the first time in recent memory, and certainly in this Trump administration, that a scandal is sticking despite his best attempts to shake it off. So with that in mind, Trump and his closest allies thought they'd spend the summer taking a well-earned victory lap, having coaxed Congress into passing the mega bill, bullied foreign governments into a slew of new trade agreements, convinced NATO allies to spend billions more on collective defense, and pressed world leaders to bow to various other demands from Doha to The Hague. Instead, questions surrounding Jeffrey Epstein, the disgraced financier and convicted sex offender who was found dead in his jail by suicide nearly 6 years ago, are overshadowing almost everything else. Quote, POTUS is clearly furious, said a person close to the White House, who, like others in the story, was granted anonymity to discuss the mood inside the West Wing. Quote, it's the first time I've seen them sort of paralyzed, and indeed that's true. As we speak, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard has joined Carolyn Leavitt to basically conduct this sort of charade to try to distract the American people with a hoax about President Obama. And we will cover that because it's important to debunk these things in real time, while also reminding everybody that the only reason they're doing this is to try to distract from this. A senior White House official told Politico that Trump is frustrated with his staff's inability to tamp down on conspiracy theories they once spread and by the wall of media coverage that started with Attorney General Pam Bondi released information from the Epstein case that was already in the public domain. Quote, he feels there are way bigger stories that deserve attention, the senior White House official said. After the Bondi release, voices on the MAGA right, from Steve Bannon to Laura Loomer, criticized the Trump administration for its handling of the controversy, warning it threatened to, quote, consume his presidency. Then last week, the Wall Street Journal published a story alleging that Trump sent Epstein a lewd birthday message. Trump has denied sending the letter and filed a defamation suit against the paper for, I believe, like $10 billion. The frustration stems in part from an understanding that this is, quote, a vulnerability, said a White House ally. Trump has famously had his finger on the pulse of the Republican base for more than a decade, but has, for now, lost the ability to dominate the narrative. That threatens to undermine the momentum and sense of invincibility the GOP felt at the beginning of the month when they were getting ready to boast about a slew of new tax cuts and border funding as their opening pitch to voters ahead of the 2026 midterms, which, by the way, that one big beautiful bill is wildly unpopular. So that was always going to be a bit of a tall order. Many of these errors are unforced, resulting from hyped-up accusations from Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel, which is fueling the indignation inside the White House. Quote, they're the ones that opened this can of worms on the Epstein conversation. No one made them do this, which makes it sting even worse, the allies said. Trump has tried to refocus the narrative, repeatedly touting the nation's economic strength and accusing former President Barack Obama of treason. On Tuesday, Trump announced that what he called the biggest trade deal ever made with Japan, the United States' fifth largest trading partner in 2024, which, by the way, will result on us paying tariffs. I think it's 15% tariffs, which means prices on Japanese imports will raise about 15%. Trump also announced deals with the Philippines and Indonesia. Quote, when you're working 12 to 15 hours a day to solve real problems and you turn on the TV to see people talking about Jeffrey Epstein, that's frustrating. And that's where the president's mindset is, the senior White House official said. Even as Trump talks trade and treason, the Department of Justice is working to put Epstein inquiries to rest, petitioning for the release of grand jury files and potentially meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's co-conspirator, who was serving a 20-year federal prison sentence for child sex trafficking and other crimes. Now, again, two things to note here. The grand jury files, they constitute about 1%, maybe 2% of the total Epstein files as we understand them. So that is a nothing burger, okay? And that also misses key details as we've described in previous videos. The meat of the Epstein files in terms of volume and substance lay outside the grand jury testimony. So again, total nothing burger, red herring in that respect. And Ghislaine Maxwell, well, she is a witness, that's true, but she's also probably seeking a pardon or commutation, right? So how do we know that her testimony to the Department of Justice will be reliable, given that she has a vested interest to tell them what they want to hear so they can regurgitate it to the American people instead of telling the truth? Even Republicans are asking questions about that. Trump on Tuesday claimed he, quote, didn't know what the Justice Department was doing. Quote, they would like to move on and talk about the things they think are W's, said the White House ally. They are really annoyed that it's an overshadowing news cycle. But there are plenty from sections of Trump's base who've long believed government protects rich and powerful people who participate in heinous crimes like Epstein's sexual abuse of underage girls, to Democrats gleefully seizing on the saga who continue to devour the coverage. And that's putting Republican leaders on the Hill in a bind as they balance their loyalty to Trump against their own fears of the base turning against them. House Republicans canceled several votes this week as leadership struggled to contain the ire from lawmakers demanding the Justice Department release files related to Epstein. The Rules Committee delayed meeting out of fear that they'd be forced to vote on the Epstein files. Quote, House members are worried and it's screwing up the schedule, said the person close to the White House. Quote, there have been points of significant pushback behind the scenes where the House has rolled over. But now the Rules Committee rebelled against the Speaker over something POTUS finds embarrassing. It's a big-ass deal. You're looking at a straight congressional rebellion. What a bombshell story taken from people who have access, close access to Donald Trump and the White House, revealing that he's in a full-blown panic, and this looks like the start of a congressional rebellion. And again, I will note before we play this clip from Harry Enton, which goes into more detail about Trump's polling, that the discharge petition that was authored by Thomas Massie, a Republican, and Ro Khanna, a Democrat, if that discharge petition has the signatures that they claim it does, like 218, then that means they can bypass Mike Johnson and the Republican majority, that Mike Johnson can't do anything to stop it. That's why they effectively shut down Congress yesterday, or maybe it was the day before. I'm losing track of time. So as to prevent that discharge petition from going live, and they're buying themselves about 5 weeks. I don't think it'll be enough, but we'll see. Now, again, to justify Trump's fears in the sense like, oh my God, this isn't going well, it's because his presidency is not going well, okay? As we're going to see from this bombshell polling, courtesy of CNN, Harry Enton.
So the president says things are great. What do the voters say?
No, I think is the answer. 6 months in, the rules of political gravity absolutely apply to Donald Trump, and the USS Donald Trump is taking on a lot of water. What are we talking about? Trump's net approval rating. Look, he started off back in January +6 points on the net approval rating, -3 in March, -7 in May, and now he's at a term too low at -11 points. His net approval rating has dropped nearly 20 points in the aggregate since the beginning of his presidency. The American people do not like what they're seeing, and Donald Trump's administration is in a ton of trouble at this point in the minds of the American voters.
Well, on what issues do the American voters seem to disapprove of him?
They disapprove of him on all of the issues. He's underwater on all the major issues of the day. Trump's net approval rating on all the major issues, -5 points in immigration, his best issue. He's underwater. How about the economy? That was what he was elected for. -14 points. How about foreign policy? -14 points. How about trade and those tariff wars? -15 points. And of course, the Epstein case, the lowest of the bunch, -37 points, 37 points below water. My goodness gracious. On every single issue, Donald Trump is below water on all the major ones. They're all dragging him down. No matter, it seems, what Donald Trump does, the American people do not like it. And that is why at this particular point, he's at a term too low.
It's interesting because this is the issue that may be on the top of many people's minds as members of Congress head home for this extended summer recess.
And it's his worst one.
I'm not sure that House members will be excited to see that number as they leave Washington today. So where does his overall approval rating stand compared to other presidents?
Okay, I do have one piece of good news for Donald Trump, and that there is one other presidency that has a lower net approval rating at this point than this one. The bad news is that it was Donald Trump's other presidency, his first presidency, net approval rating 6 months in. The worst was in 2017. Donald Trump was 16 points underwater. The second worst, however, is this Donald Trump presidency, 11 points underwater. The average president at this point since 1953 has a plus 27 net approval rating. John, do some quick math with me. It seems to me that Donald Trump is about 40 points lower than the average president at this particular point. He has the second worst net approval rating at this point. He is underwater on all the major issues of the day. The bottom line is 6 months into this administration, I think that most Americans would apply the word or words disaster, terrible, awful, horrible. I think that is the way that the American people would see it at this particular point.
Agreed. 100%. Say no more. So there you have it, folks. Donald Trump is objectively unpopular. He is historically unpopular. He is far more unpopular in the aggregate than any Democratic or Republican predecessor since at least 1953. And in the backdrop of this, you have this ongoing Epstein scandal that he just can't shake, and thus the bombshell leaks from the Bombshell Politico article revealing that even behind the scenes, it's confirming what we're seeing with our own eyes. He's trying to put on a brave front, but he's just losing it, and it's even worse behind the scenes. So you'd love to see it. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.